Cale was a blacksmith. His village stood at the edge of a vast empire. Many people came to his forge. They knew his skill. He made the best blades in the land. His hammers sang a song of creation. Swords from his hand were strong and true. Warriors sought his work. Farmers needed his tools. Cale's name was known far and wide. He was a master of fire and steel, yet his heart carried a heavy stone. A deep well of sorrow resided within him. Despite his fame, Cale felt a bitter wind blow through his days. Life had taken much from him. His beloved wife, Ilara, was gone. Her laughter no longer echoed in their small home. The warmth she brought had faded like a dying ember. He missed her touch, her smile, her gentle voice. The forge was busy, but his life felt empty. Each strike of the hammer seemed to echo his loneliness. He saw her face in the dancing flames sometimes. It was a fleeting comfort, quickly lost. His son, Lorik, had also left. He did not choose the rhythm of the forge. Lorik chose the quiet world of books and scrolls. He travelled to the great city to become a scholar. Cale understood, yet he did not understand. The forge was a legacy, a craft passed down. But Lorik sought a different path. Cale felt the distance like a chasm. He was proud of his son, yet a part of him ached. The silence in his home grew deeper with each passing season, a constant reminder. So Cale worked. He poured his bitterness into the heat and the metal. The fire in his forge burned fiercely, but the fire in his soul was dim and cold. He shaped steel with unmatched skill, yet he could not shape his own happiness. The days were long, the nights were longer still. He was a craftsman of sharp edges, but the sharpest edge was the one within his own heart. He longed for something he could not name, a peace that eluded his grasp. The sun began to dip below the horizon. It painted the sky in hues of orange and purple. Cale was cleaning his tools. The day's work was almost done. The scent of coal smoke and cooling metal hung in the air. He felt tired, a weariness that went beyond his bones. It was the weariness of a spirit that had forgotten how to soar. He longed for the quiet of his empty home, though it offered little solace. Just then a shadow fell across the doorway of his forge. A stranger stood there. He was a wanderer, Cale could tell. His clothes were simple, dusted from the road. His face was calm. His eyes held a gentle light. He did not look like a warrior. He did not look like a merchant. There was an air of quiet wisdom about him. The wanderer carried a long bundle wrapped in old cloth. He stepped into the forge, his movements unhurried. Cale watched him, a flicker of curiosity piercing through his usual gloom. The wanderer spoke, his voice soft but clear. "Are you Cale, the blacksmith?" he asked. Cale nodded, not offering more. The wanderer then unwrapped his bundle. Inside lay a sword, or rather what was once a sword. It was broken in two. The metal was scarred and dark. It looked like a piece of junk, something to be discarded. Cale had seen many damaged weapons. This one seemed beyond repair, a lost cause. It was a testament to some terrible battle, or perhaps just neglect. Cale looked at the broken blade with a practiced, critical eye. He felt a familiar cynicism rise within him. "This is worthless," Cale said, his voice gruff. "It cannot be mended to its former glory." The wanderer simply smiled, a patient, knowing smile. "Everything has potential, even in brokenness," the wanderer replied. "I ask only that you try. There is more to this blade than meets the eye." Cale hesitated. He wanted to refuse. But something in the wanderer's gaze made him pause. Reluctantly he agreed. "I will see what can be done," Cale grumbled, taking the pieces. Cale laid the two pieces of the sword on his workbench. He examined the jagged break. The metal was old, but it had a strange quality he couldn't quite place. His mind told him it was a fool's errand. His experience whispered of failure. He saw only ruin, shards of a forgotten story. The wanderer stood nearby, watching him with quiet intensity. He did not interfere. He simply observed, his presence a silent question. Cale felt a familiar irritation, but also a strange pull. As Cale prepared to light the forge, the wanderer spoke. His voice was like the gentle flow of a river. "Broken things can be remade, Cale," he said. "Sometimes when they are mended with care and wisdom, they become stronger than before." Cale glanced at the man, a skeptical frown on his face. Stronger? This piece of scrap? The idea seemed preposterous. Yet the wanderer's words were not a command, but an offering. They hung in the air like dust motes in a sunbeam, inviting contemplation. Cale scoffed inwardly, but he did not voice his doubt. He had given his word. He was a man of his craft. He began to work. He coaxed the embers in the forge back to life. The bellows sighed, breathing air into the growing flames. The fire began to roar, a hungry beast ready to consume and transform. The words of the wanderer, however, lingered in his mind. Stronger than before. Could it be true? Could something so damaged find new strength, new purpose? He took the broken pieces of the sword. He began the arduous task of cleaning them. He removed the rust and grime. He prepared the edges for the difficult joining. A small part of him, perhaps the part that still remembered hope, guided his hands. Or perhaps it was merely the habit of his profession. He did not know. But as he worked, he felt a subtle shift within him. The task was a challenge, and Cale, despite his bitterness, had never shied away from a challenge at the forge. Cale placed the prepared pieces of the sword into the heart of the fire. The metal began to glow. First a dull red, then brighter to orange, then a brilliant yellow-white. It surrendered itself to the intense heat. Sparks danced upwards like fleeting stars escaping into the smoky air. The forge was filled with the rhythmic roar of the flames and the steady pulse of the bellows. Cale watched the metal intently. He was searching for the right moment, the perfect heat for the union. The wanderer, who had been watching in silence, spoke again. His voice cut through the noise of the forge, calm and clear. "The fire reveals what is hidden, Cale," he observed, his eyes fixed on the glowing steel. "It burns away the impurities. It shows the true nature of the metal. What is weak will crumble. What is strong will endure and be purified." The wanderer's words were simple, yet they carried a profound weight. Cale felt them resonate deep within his own being, stirring forgotten sentiments. Cale continued to watch the metal in the fire. He saw tiny imperfections he had missed before. The intense heat brought them to the surface. Some sputtered and vanished. The fire was indeed a revealer of truths. It showed not only the flaws in the steel, but also its potential. He realized the wanderer was not just speaking of the sword. He was speaking of life itself, of the trials that test us, that burn away our pretenses and reveal our core. With newfound focus, Cale drew the pieces from the fire. He laid them together on the anvil. He began to hammer, his strikes precise and strong. The fire had been a teacher, not just a tool. It had shown him the path. He was not just joining two pieces of metal. He was participating in a process of revelation and transformation. Each blow of the hammer was a step towards bringing forth the hidden strength within the broken blade. The song of the anvil now had a different tune. Section 5. The slow temper, forging true resilience in metal and man. Under Cale's skilled hands, the sword began to take shape. The weld held. The blade was whole again, no longer two separate pieces. It looked like a sword once more. It gleamed dully in the forge light. But Cale knew it was not yet strong. It was still brittle from the intense heat of the forge. It needed the crucial process of tempering to gain its true resilience. Without it, the blade would shatter at the first true test. Its beauty would be fragile, its purpose unfulfilled. The wanderer, sensing Cale's thoughts, spoke of patience. "The best blades, Cale, are tempered slowly," he explained. His voice was gentle, like a steady flame. "They are heated and cooled again and again. Each cycle builds strength, each careful step imparts flexibility and endurance. Haste in this process creates only the illusion of strength. True resilience is born from deliberate, mindful tempering." Cale listened, the words sinking into his weary heart like water into dry earth. Cale knew the technical aspects of tempering. He had performed the process countless times, but he realized he had forgotten its deeper meaning. He had often rushed, driven by bitterness or impatience. He had sought quick results, not lasting strength. The wanderer's words reminded him that true strength, in steel and in spirit, could not be hurried. It required a willingness to endure the cycles of fire and coolness, of trial and rest. It was a lesson in perseverance. He began to temper the blade with a new sense of care. He heated it carefully, watching the colors shift across the surface of the steel, from straw yellow to peacock blue. Then he quenched it, the hiss of steam filling the forge. He repeated the process slowly, methodically. He felt a rhythm developing, a connection to the metal, a purpose that went beyond mere craftsmanship. He was not just making a sword, he was learning about the very nature of strength and the patience required to achieve it. The tempering was complete. The blade lay on the quenching trough, cooling. Cale picked it up. It was sharp. It was perfectly balanced. It gleamed with a subtle, powerful light in the dim forge. He ran his thumb carefully along its edge. It was the finest work he had done in a long, long time. A flicker of pride, genuine and warm, touched Cale's heart. It was a feeling he had almost forgotten. This sword was more than just metal. It was a testament to renewal. The Wanderer smiled, a genuine, appreciative smile. "A fine blade, Cale," he said, his eyes reflecting the sword's gleam. "You have brought it back from ruin. You have given it strength and beauty." Cale felt a flush of warmth at the praise. It was not the usual perfunctory compliment from a customer. It felt like recognition from someone who understood the soul of the work. The Wanderer then added, "But its true test, its ultimate value, is not in its edge or its balance alone. It is in its wielder. A sword is but a tool, Cale," the Wanderer continued, his gaze thoughtful. "Its purpose, its meaning comes from the hand that holds it. In the hand of a just person, it can defend the innocent, uphold truth. In the hand of a cruel person, it can bring only sorrow and destruction. The sword itself is neutral. Its character is defined by the heart of the one who wields it." These words struck Cale deeply. He had made countless weapons, but had he ever truly considered their ultimate purpose beyond the transaction? Cale looked at his own calloused hands, hands that had shaped so much steel, hands that had felt so much loss. He thought of his life, his bitterness, his isolation. What purpose did he currently hold? Was he wielding his own life with justice and truth, or was he allowing sorrow to define its character? The Wanderer's lesson was not just about the sword, it was about him. It was about the choices one makes and how those choices shape the impact of one's existence. The Wanderer gently took the newly reforged sword from Cale's workbench. He held it with a profound respect, his fingers tracing the line of the blade. It seemed to fit perfectly in his grasp, as if it were an extension of his own arm. The sword felt alive, balanced, imbued with a quiet power that Cale himself had painstakingly worked into its very being. The air in the forge seemed to still, charged with anticipation. Cale watched, his breath caught in his throat, wondering what would happen next. The Wanderer turned towards Cale's massive stone anvil. This anvil had been the heart of Cale's forge for decades. It had borne witness to countless hours of labor, the creation of innumerable tools and weapons. It was a symbol of Cale's unyielding work, his steadfastness. But perhaps, Cale thought, it was also a symbol of his stubborn heart, his resistance to change, his hardened sorrow. The anvil was chipped and scarred, much like his own spirit had become over the long years of grief and isolation. With a movement that was both swift and graceful, a motion that spoke of effortless power, the Wanderer raised the sword. For a moment it caught the light of the forge fire, a streak of silver lightning. Then he brought it down in a clean, decisive arc. The blade struck the corner of the heavy stone anvil. There was a sharp, ringing sound, a brief song of steel meeting stone. And then silence. Cale stared, his eyes wide with disbelief. He expected the blade to shatter, or at best to chip. Cale gasped. A section of the anvil's corner had been cleanly sheared off. It lay on the dusty floor. The sword was unharmed, its edge still perfect, gleaming. No ordinary sword, no matter how well made, could have cut through solid stone like that. This blade was something more. It was a miracle of craftsmanship, a testament to the lessons Cale had just relearned. The restored sword had not only cut through stone, it felt as if it had cut through the very fabric of Cale's disbelief, revealing a new, astonishing possibility. The Wanderer placed the extraordinary sword gently back onto Cale's workbench. He looked at Cale, not with triumph, but with a deep, kind understanding in his eyes. The shared experience of remaking the blade and the lessons imparted had forged a silent bond between them. The air in the forge was different now. It was no longer heavy with Cale's unspoken sorrow, but thrummed with a new, vibrant energy, a sense of wonder. Cale felt a sense of awe and a burgeoning gratitude he could not yet articulate. From a pouch at his belt, the wanderer took out a small, surprisingly heavy bag. He placed it on the bench beside the sword. It clinked with the unmistakable sound of gold coins. It was far more than the usual payment for even the finest new sword, let alone the repair of an old one. "For your work and for your willingness to listen," the wanderer said softly. Alongside the gold, he placed a simple, folded piece of parchment sealed with a plain wax stamp. Cale looked from the gold to the note, his mind still reeling from the anvil. Before Cale could find his voice to thank him, or to ask the myriad questions that now filled his mind, the wanderer turned. He moved towards the doorway as quietly as he had arrived. Cale opened his mouth to speak, to ask him to stay, to share a drink, to learn more. But the wanderer simply smiled one last time, a serene and knowing smile. And then he was gone. He vanished into the deepening twilight as silently and mysteriously as the morning mist dissipates with the rising sun. Cale stood alone in his forge. The only sounds were the crackling of the dying fire and the faint echo of the wanderer's words. He picked up the heavy pouch of gold, feeling its unfamiliar weight. Then his fingers, still smudged with soot, reached for the folded note. His hands trembled slightly. The forge, usually a place of familiar labor, now felt sacred, transformed by the visitor and his impossible sword. A new kind of silence filled the space, a silence pregnant with meaning and the promise of change. Cale carefully broke the seal on the parchment and unfolded the note. The wanderer's handwriting was as clear and simple as his speech. The message was short, yet it resonated with all the power of the lessons he had imparted. It read, "The sword is remade, stronger and truer. Now, Cale, it is time to reforge your own life. The same principles apply." Cale read the words once, then twice. Each word seemed to settle deep within his soul, planting seeds of understanding. The wanderer's lessons echoed in his mind, clear and bright. Broken things can indeed be remade, often stronger. His own broken spirit, fractured by loss and loneliness, was not beyond mending. The fire of trials reveals what is hidden, burning away the dross to show true character. He'd hidden his pain for too long. Patience in tempering leads to real strength. He needed to be patient with himself, to allow healing to happen slowly, deliberately. And a sword's true test, a life's true test, is in its wielder, in the purpose it serves. Cale looked at the severed corner of his anvil, a stark symbol of an old way broken. He looked at the magnificent sword, gleaming with new potential. Then he caught his own reflection in its polished surface. He saw a man marked by sorrow, yes, but also a man with skilled hands and a heart that was perhaps not entirely cold. He saw a glimmer of the man he once was and the man he could yet become. The lessons were not just for steel, they were for the human spirit. A new fire ignited within Cale. It was not the fierce, consuming fire of bitterness that had driven him for so long. It was a different kind of fire, a warm, steady flame of hope, of courage, of nascent purpose. He understood now. His journey was not over. Like the broken sword, his life could be reforged. He could mend the fractures, embrace the tempering, and choose a new purpose. The wanderer had given him more than a restored blade. He had given him back himself. The blacksmith's journey was only just beginning.